Hey guys, tonight we're opening the creaky doors of history's weirdest medicine cabinet and rummaging around for the one plant that has been terrifying, delighting, and occasionally poisoning humanity for centuries. Datura. Not ringing a bell? Imagine a flower so pretty it's practically begging to be Instagrammed, but so toxic that even medieval doctors said, maybe don't. Tonight we're tracing the bizarre journey of this notorious plant. From ancient shamans tripping in the desert, to Victorian housewives accidentally seeing their wallpaper melt, to TikTok herbalists, rediscovering it and promptly regretting their life choices. And since this is our brand new channel, before you settle in, maybe take a second to hit like and subscribe, but only if you actually enjoy what you find here. Leave a comment telling me where you're listening from and what time it is for you. Now, dim the lights, switch on a fan for that faintly ominous white noise, and get as comfortable as you can, preferably somewhere with zero poisonous nightshades in arm's reach. Let's pause for a moment. Have you ever wondered how ancient people figure out which plants wouldn't immediately kill you? Why did Victorian doctors think delirium was an acceptable side effect? Can a medieval peasant accidentally become a wizard just by sniffing the wrong flower? And in the age of YouTube, who on earth thought it was a good idea to eat something called devil's trumpet for views? Would you have survived the Middle Ages? Or would you be remembered as that one guy who thought a deadly hallucination sounded like a fun weekend? Congratulations. You've just woken up somewhere between an ancient bonfire, a medieval herb garden, and the world's sketchiest Reddit forum. The year? Irrelevant. Because when it comes to Datura, time, space, and basic safety are about to get extremely blurry. You're standing in the Stone Age. Someone has to decide whether this strange, spiky pod is food, medicine, or a one-way ticket to meeting the ancestors. Who volunteers? Probably the guy who lost at rock, paper, scissors. A single bite later, and congratulations. You've invented both shamanism and the world's first regret. Let's set the scene. Your prehistoric family is hungry, tired, and slightly traumatized after last night's saber-toothed squirrel incident. The only thing in arm's reach that isn't already gnawed on by wildlife is this intimidating green pod, bristling with spikes, oozing confidence, and smelling faintly of danger. You, as the unlucky volunteer, are voted in by a group who suddenly find themselves fascinated by a patch of dirt, avoiding eye contact as you approach the plant like it might lunge at you first. You tug the pod loose, trying not to look at the little white flowers that seem to wink with malicious intent. Should you roast it, boil it, eat it raw, like a mammoth with something to prove? Nobody knows, and nobody's written the cookbook yet. So you do what Stone Age people do best. Improvise. One tentative nibble later, your tongue goes numb, your stomach does a flip, and the colors around you turn up to 11. The others watch, uncertain, while you suddenly become the after-dinner entertainment, muttering nonsense to the sky and trying to shake hands with an invisible bear. It's a memorable debut. 5 minutes ago, you were a respectable hunter-gatherer. Now you're the village's cautionary tale, and the accidental inventor of performance art. Meanwhile, your friends are taking notes. The lesson. Maybe let the next guy try the weird plants first. The symptoms escalate. You break out in a cold sweat, your heart pounding like a mammoth stampede, and your pupils dilate so wide you can see behind your own regrets. Your arms feel like they're floating, your feet like they've melted. Congratulations, you're the world's first unwilling psychonaut. The tribe, ever supportive, debates whether to intervene or simply mark the spot for future avoidance. They consider a prayer, or at least a polite apology to your mother. Somewhere around hour 2, you're inventing new languages, conversing fluently with rocks, and giving a TED Talk to a cluster of curious beetles. Your inner visions become legend. Is this prophecy? Is it poison? Or just what happens when you let Gary pick the snacks? One thing's clear. Nobody is sleeping tonight, especially not you. Every shadow on the cave wall looks like a hungry spirit, or Worse, your mother-in-law. By morning, you've either survived, learned absolutely nothing, or gained a lifetime's worth of haunting flashbacks. The tribe records this event in the only way they know how, grunting and waving their arms wildly every time someone gets too close to the Datura bush. Eventually, someone tries drawing it on the cave wall. Big, spiky, and always with a stick figure running in the opposite direction. Yet, in true human fashion, the lesson is not let's never do that again. It's what if we used just a little bit, but on purpose. Thus begins the long tradition of humans flirting with danger for fun, for visions, or just for bragging rights at the next campfire. Soon the Datura plant is no longer just a warning. It's the centerpiece of rituals, initiations, and the original "Don't try this at home" segment. So, as you fade back to your normal, stone-cold reality, you can proudly say you've contributed to humanity's endless experiment with edible mistakes. Maybe one day they'll name a medical condition after you, or at least a cautionary proverb. Never trust a plant that looks like it could win a fight. Welcome to prehistory, where curiosity doesn't just kill the cat, it hallucinates one first. And that, dear time traveler, is how you become both a legend and a warning label. Sleep tight, and maybe skip the foraging tomorrow. Imagine being the tribe's medicine person. Your toolkit, stones, bird feathers, and this suspicious flower that makes you speak to spirits, or just the hut wall. You chew the seeds, see colors not found in nature, and try to convince everyone it's a deep spiritual journey, not a toxic reaction. Nice try. Let's set the scene. It's dawn in prehistory, and your community is staring at you, hopeful, nervous, and maybe a little skeptical after last week's failed rain dance. Your job is to heal, to bless, and occasionally to scare the children into behaving. The pressure is on, the options are few. You've got some pebbles that may or may not be magical, a feather collection that looks suspiciously like lunch leftovers, and, right in the center of your medicine pouch, the dried, crumbling seeds of Datura, the plant your predecessor swore could unlock the other side. He also talked to trees, but who are you to judge? Tonight, there's a problem. An illness nobody can name, a spirit nobody can see, and a crowd that wants answers. So you do what every great mystic does. You roll the dice with the universe. You crush the seeds, mix them with water, and perform a little song that is half invocation, half desperate improvisation. The tribe watches. Someone's baby cries. The dog licks itself in the corner, completely unfazed by the supernatural. Down the hatch. At first, nothing happens. Maybe you got lucky. Maybe this time the gods are out of office. Then the room tilts, the fire grows teeth, and the shadows on the wall start holding a committee meeting about your future. Your head swims with visions, some profound, some deeply confusing. Did the ancestors just speak to you, or did you hallucinate that the deer skull is giving you side-eye? It's a toss-up. You sway, arms wide, chanting nonsense syllables that sound impressively mystical if you say them fast enough. The tribe is rapt, or terrified, or both. You declare, with absolute conviction, that the fever will break after 3 days, as long as nobody eats the yellow berries near the river again. You wave your hands for emphasis, accidentally flinging your lucky feather into the cooking pot. This is the razor's edge of ancient shamanism. Is it a sacred revelation, or is your brain just melting? The truth is, nobody knows. The visions come in waves, sometimes poetic, sometimes panic-inducing. You see spirits dancing, animals speaking, the sky rippling like water. You also see your own feet floating above your head, which probably isn't in the official mythology, but hey, you're a pioneer. If you're lucky, your trip ends with a profound message for the tribe. Hunt to the east, avoid the swamp, give thanks to the sun. If you're not, you wake up with a pounding headache, mysterious bruises, and the sneaking suspicion you tried to baptize a chicken. Either way, the legend grows. Some say you're blessed, Some say you're mad. Everyone agrees you smell like smoke and regret. The rest of the village will be retelling this night for months. Children reenact your dramatic collapse. Elders whisper about the time the shaman spoke with the ancestors, and nobody mentions the part where you hugged a tree for 20 minutes. The plant becomes both feared and revered, reserved for the brave, the foolish, or anyone who thinks their spiritual credit score could use a boost. Next time someone gets sick, the village looks to you again, but with just a little more hesitation. You reach for the Datura, pause, and instead recommend tea and a nice nap. Wisdom comes with experience, and sometimes with a lingering, unpleasant taste in your mouth. And so, the Datura ritual continues, passed down like a family secret, equal parts science, faith, and please don't let this kill me. In the grand experiment of human spirituality, you're the original beta tester. If the gods are real, you've definitely called their customer support line. If not, well, at least the chicken seems to think you're onto something. Welcome to shamanic tradition, where enlightenment is always one questionable snack away from disaster. Datura isn't picky, it'll grow anywhere, from Mexican deserts to Indian jungles to your neighbor's front yard. Every culture meets it. Every culture instantly regrets it, and somehow the plant survives every attempted exorcism, burning, or half-baked detox tea experiment. Let's take a sleepy stroll through time and space, following the Datura plant as it pops up like history's most persistent party crasher. You might think a flower that causes talking goats and time-bending headaches would have gone extinct after the first accidental taste test. Not Datura. This plant is a master of disguise, shape-shifting from ornamental garden beauty to evil spirit in leaf form faster than you can say bad idea. Your first stop, ancient Mexico. You wake up in the heart of the Aztec Empire, where Datura, known locally as toloache, gets brewed into potions for everything from prophecy to curse breaking to the world's most memorable quinceañera. Here, the local priest waves a feather and solemnly declares that the gods demand you drink a little vision juice. You, always the overachiever, drink the whole cup. By sunset, you're either a full-fledged oracle or the village's new cautionary tale. But Datura doesn't linger. It seeds itself along trade routes, hiding in plain sight between cornfields and ancient highways. Next, you're blinking in the morning mist of rural India. Here, it's called Datura, and it's as famous for its medicinal uses as it is for sending unlucky travelers straight to the afterlife. Ayurvedic doctors carefully debate the correct dosage, while everyone else quietly wonders if there's any such thing as a safe amount. Spoiler: there isn't. Keep moving. Datura's in a hurry. You catch a chill in a Chinese apothecary, where the plant is dried, ground, and slipped into imperial remedies. The emperor's insomnia is gone, but so is his ability to remember his own name. Local herbalists swear by its powers. Local palace guards quietly wish they'd never heard of it. In the Mediterranean, Datura pops up in Greek and Roman lore as a mysterious, magical weed. Oracles sniff the flowers and mutter cryptic messages, while doctors try and fail to find the line between therapeutic dose and call the undertaker. Even the gods look away awkwardly. Then it's off to medieval Europe, where every garden with a weird plant immediately gets labeled witch territory. Datura becomes a staple in flying ointments, love potions, and general-purpose mischief. Monks debate whether to bless it or burn it. Housewives swear the leaves move at night, and when someone tries to make herbal tea out of it, the resulting family dinner is still remembered in village legend as the night everyone met the Virgin Mary and her talking donkey. Not even colonial explorers could resist. Europeans sail to the New World, see locals using Datura in sacred rituals, and, in true colonial fashion, immediately decide to give it a try. This goes exactly as well as you'd expect. Several weeks, and one lost shipment of sanity later, everyone agrees the plant is possessed. The solution? ship seeds back home and try again. Because why learn from your mistakes when you can export them globally? Modern times are no safer. Datura infiltrates suburban gardens, masquerading as an exotic ornamental. Homeowners are seduced by its dramatic, trumpet-shaped flowers, blissfully unaware that it's the botanical equivalent of storing fireworks next to a campfire. Neighborhood children dare each other to eat the seeds. Paramedics write stern warnings. Garden clubs issue polite but pointed memos. Maybe plant marigolds instead. And yet, after thousands of years, failed antidotes, and countless attempts to banish, burn, or boil it, Datura is still here, unbothered, undefeated. Still photogenic, still poisonous, still tempting the next generation of the world's most optimistic herbalists. In the end, it's a simple lesson. You can't outsmart a plant that doesn't care if you're smart. Datura is the original survivor, thriving in every soil, laughing at every warning label, and waiting for the next human to wander by. Look at those gorgeous blooms and ask, how bad could it be? Very bad. Always very, very bad. Sleep well, and let's hope your neighbor prefers roses. Welcome to the age of Sanskrit scrolls and elephant rides. Datura shows up in ancient Ayurvedic texts as both a divine medicine and a dangerous spirit. Doctors debate, is it a healer, a killer, or just an elaborate prank by the gods? Results may vary. You wake up in a smoky, bustling village in the heart of ancient India, where the air is alive with chanting, cowbells, and the distant sound of someone failing to control a very stubborn peacock. Here, medicine is less take two and call me in the morning, and more mix 3 powders, chant the right mantra, and try not to become a cautionary tale. In this world, Ayurveda reigns supreme, a medical system as old as civilization itself, and just as enthusiastic about experimenting on anything that grows. Datura, known locally as Datura, isn't just another leafy green in the village apothecary. No, it's the wild card, the handle with extreme suspicion entry in every healer's handbook. On one side of the courtyard, an elderly doctor, Vaidya, is waxing poetic about Datura's miraculous properties. A pinch for pain, a pinch for asthma, a pinch for those unfortunate enough to have angered their in-laws. On the other, his younger apprentice is frantically sketching funeral pyres and making a list of plants to never, ever try on purpose. And yet, the draw is strong. Ancient texts claim that Datura can cure fevers, calm coughs, banish spirits, and even help you win at dice. Medicine of the gods. The scrolls announce, in beautiful calligraphy. They do not, however, mention the dose, or what to do if your patient starts seeing their ancestors waving from the ceiling, which, let's be honest, happens more often than you'd hope. You, as the brave soul, or just the least persuasive patient, are offered a concoction for your mysterious ailment, a blend of honey, ghee, and just a hint of datura seed, hand-ground and chanted over for good measure. The doctor assures you it's safe. The doctor's apprentice quietly lights incense and starts praying, just in case. Within the hour, you're feeling not quite right. Your headache is gone, but so is your ability to walk in a straight line. The village seems more vibrant, the cows more judgmental, the peacocks suddenly capable of meaningful conversation. The doctor, unfazed, notes your reaction in his scrolls, marks it as potentially enlightening, and sends a runner for more honey. This, it turns out, is the great Ayurvedic debate. Is Datura a shortcut to enlightenment, or a fast pass to the afterlife? The texts argue, the doctors argue, the village elders argue. Some swear by its powers, citing legends of holy men who could recite the Vedas backwards after a good Datura session. Others point to the village goat, who nibbled the plant and spent 3 days convinced he was a mango tree. Meanwhile, word spreads. Datura is promoted as a sacred offering in Shiva temples, Legend has it the god himself is immune to its effects, which is exactly the kind of marketing claim that guarantees repeat customers. Pilgrims line up, hopeful for visions, or at least a good story. More than a few leave with both. Ayurvedic physicians, ever resourceful, try to tame Datura's wild side. They recommend boiling, soaking, singing to it, anything to make it less likely to ruin your day. Some recipes are lost to time. Others survive, full of cryptic warnings and enthusiastic understatements. May cause mild agitation. Translation: may cause you to wrestle your own shadow. By sunset, the patient recovers, or not. The apprentice learns a valuable lesson. If you're going to experiment with dangerous plants, do it on someone who owes you money. The doctor updates his scrolls, quietly adds another caution, and offers the family a free amulet for peace of mind. So ends another day in ancient India, where every medicine is also a gamble and every healer a part-time risk manager. You survive with a story for the ages and a newfound respect for anything labeled sacred and mysterious. Sleep well, and if you dream of talking peacocks, maybe skip the Datura next time. You're an imperial physician. The emperor has a headache, and you're out of normal medicine. You reach for Datura, cross your fingers, and hope the emperor doesn't start seeing dragons, or, if he does, that he enjoys it. The fate of your career, and possibly your head, depends on it. Let's set the scene. The forbidden city is hushed, except for the nervous shuffling of attendants and the steady drip of ceremonial incense. You're standing at the edge of the imperial bedchamber, clutching your medicine kit and your remaining dignity. The emperor, a man accustomed to absolute power and zero discomfort, lies in bed, groaning theatrically and demanding relief before the next council meeting. He's already tried acupressure, prayer, and at least 3 different magic elixirs brewed by ambitious cousins. Nothing has worked. The royal patience is wearing thin. You, promoted last month for correctly diagnosing too much hot air at a poetry banquet, are suddenly the center of attention. Every eye is on you, including the palace cat, who is quietly judging your career choices. Desperate times call for desperate measures. You open your herbal satchel, and there it is, Datura, known locally as Yang Jinhua, Angel's Trumpet, a name that sounds a lot more heavenly than it acts. It's not your first choice, or second, or even 10th. The plant's reputation precedes it, a potent ingredient, both revered and feared. Ancient medical texts describe its powers in elegant brushstrokes. Cools the body, opens the spirit, causes one to see the hidden. They do not mention whether the hidden is a vision of enlightenment or the pattern on the emperor's robe coming to life and dancing around the chamber. Still, you have to try something. You prepare a minuscule dose, mixing the crushed flour with honey and a prayer that the emperor's sense of taste is as poor as his patience. The cup is presented. The emperor raises an eyebrow, but he's already run out of options, and concubines willing to sing soothing songs, so he drinks. Minutes pass. You hold your breath. The emperor's headache eases. Success. You are a genius, a miracle worker, possibly even due for a promotion. And then the emperor sits up, wide-eyed, and begins recounting his conversation with the jade rabbit from the moon, who has strong opinions about tax reform. Congratulations, you have cured the headache and invented a new category of imperial entertainment. Within the hour, word spreads. Courtiers peek into the chamber, wondering if they, too, might benefit from a little enlightenment, or at least some dragon spotting. The palace whispers, "Is this the beginning of a new era in medicine, or the last day anyone will trust a doctor with wildflowers and a reckless streak?" The imperial scribes are already taking notes. Datura, effective for headaches, sleep, and communicating with celestial livestock. Official herbal guides are updated with phrases like, "Use sparingly," and side effects may include visions of immortals and sudden poetry. As the effect wears off, the emperor is in a surprisingly good mood. He orders a banquet, invites the court to share in his profound spiritual revelations, and grants you a silk robe for your innovative approach to medicine. You accept, trying to ignore the lingering sense that you've just survived an exam with no right answers. Of course, not every case is so lucky. Somewhere, a less fortunate healer is field testing Datura on a cranky warlord who does not enjoy surprise spirit animals. Rumors spread across China, from bustling cities to sleepy villages, about the plant that cures and confuses in equal measure. Some healers declare it a blessing, others insist it's the reason old Uncle Joe still thinks he's a goose. In the end, the imperial headache fades, your career survives, for now, and Yang Jinhua finds its place in the great, sprawling cabinet of Chinese medicine, part miracle, part mystery, part cautionary tale. You tidy your kit, make a mental note to stock up on less eventful herbs, and resolve to treat the next royal headache with nothing stronger than a firm massage and a story about moderation. As you leave, you hear the emperor humming a tune taught to him by a very persuasive dragon. It's going to be a long dynasty. The Greeks had wine, philosophy, and an entire garden of dangerous plants. Datura ends up in the hands of oracles and philosophers, both of whom think a little mind-bending is good for clarity. Whether it is or not, nobody's quite sure. Let's wander into the sun-soaked chaos of ancient Greece, where everyone has an opinion, a story, and probably a hangover. Here, the pursuit of knowledge is serious business. Philosophers debate the meaning of life on marble steps. Priests squint at the sky for omens, and everyone else is trying to invent democracy before breakfast. In this landscape of olive oil and ambition, you, a hopeful seeker of wisdom, find yourself outside the famous oracle at Delphi, history's original psychic hotline. The air is thick with incense and rumors. You clutch a small offering and shuffle nervously forward. The oracle's assistants, think ancient hype, men in linen skirts, usher you into a cave that smells faintly of goats, desperation, and something disturbingly herbal. The Pythia, Delphi's high priestess, sits perched atop her tripod, ready to channel the wisdom of Apollo, or at least a very intense daydream. And what's fueling her visions tonight? That's right, Datura, freshly foraged from the foothills. Sure, there are safer ways to have an epiphany, but the Greeks aren't here for safe, they're here for memorable. The priestess chews the leaves, perhaps with a dash of laurel for style, and soon her eyes glaze over as she prepares to answer your burning questions. You want to know your future. She wants to know why the cave wall just tried to shake her hand. The answers come in riddles. Cross the river 3 times, but beware the singing frogs. You write it down, just in case, and back away slowly. By sunset, word has spread. The gods have spoken, the oracles have interpreted, and you now have 3 new anxieties and a sudden suspicion about amphibians. But the oracles aren't the only ones dabbling in botanical experimentation. Enter the philosophers, bearded, sandal-wearing, and one missed meal away from inventing a new branch of logic. You're sitting in the agora, eavesdropping on Socrates and his students, when someone passes around a cup of suspiciously aromatic tea. Datura again, mixed with wild honey, because nothing says serious discourse like a healthy side of delirium. The logic is impeccable. Surely, if you break free from ordinary perception, you'll understand the universe, or at least why the olive harvest is late. What follows is an evening of impassioned debate about whether tables are real, whether numbers exist, and why nobody can feel their own toes. Plato, as usual, writes it all down, promising to edit out the hallucinated parts. He does not. Meanwhile, the physicians are watching with one eyebrow permanently raised. Hippocrates, the father of medicine and professional party pooper, warns everyone that nightshades are unpredictable. But when the patient is in pain, and the pharmacy is mostly rocks and wishes, Datura sometimes finds its way into the prescription list, right between take a walk and hope for the best. The result? A population that is either pain-free, profoundly inspired, or very, very lost in their own courtyard. Eventually, the Greeks, ever practical, develop a healthy respect for Datura. Too much, and you're talking to statues. Too little, and you're still stuck in your own mind. The plant becomes part of the legend, respected, feared, occasionally blamed for embarrassing public incidents. Not my fault, it was the Datura, becomes the ancient version of I was hacked. By the end of the day, you've survived oracular riddles, philosophical fever dreams, and at least one questionable medical treatment. You might be wiser, or you might just be more confused, but that, in ancient Greece, is pretty much the same thing. You stumble home, clutching your notes, half expecting a singing frog to jump out at any moment. And so, the legend of Datura grows, woven into the history of the world's most curious thinkers and boldest visionaries. Was it clarity, chaos, or a little of both? In Greece, that's called tradition. Sleep tight and keep your herbal tea safely labeled. The Scythians, famed horse warriors, decide that if you can't ride it, you might as well smoke it. Datura gets burned in ritual fires, and suddenly the steppe is less Game of Thrones and more animated fever dream. Would you ride into battle after this? Probably not in a straight line. Picture it. Endless grasslands stretching from horizon to horizon, the wind howling like a chorus of wolves that missed their singing lessons. You're a Scythian, wild hair, thick furs, jewelry made from things you personally defeated. Your daily calendar is simple: breakfast, archery, mystical rites, raiding, and a hearty dinner of fermented mare's milk. Life is intense, unpredictable, and you have precisely 0 food blogs to tell you which routes are trending this season. But tonight is different. It's time for a ritual, and someone's great-grandmother swears the secret to communing with the ancestors is a handful of mysterious, spiky seeds tossed into the bonfire. The tribe gathers, forming a loose circle around the flames, each person with the air of someone about to try something new and slightly questionable. Datura, unruly, potent, and guaranteed to turn any social gathering into a cautionary tale, is center stage. The smoke starts curling into the sky, thick and fragrant, not unpleasant if you ignore the undertones of botanical regret. Elders, warriors, even a few brave horses breathe it in, and soon the evening turns interesting. The fire dances with unexpected colors. The wind stops just long enough for you to hear the grass whisper ancient gossip. Somewhere in the haze, your cousin claims he's unlocked the meaning of life, but he's explaining it to a tree stump. Your chieftain, not to be outdone, starts reciting poetry. It's mostly just shouting the names of famous horses, but the crowd is rapt. A shaman stands, arms raised, eyes swirling like he's just seen the dawn of the universe and possibly the end of his own shoes. People sway, chant, and someone invents the conga line centuries ahead of schedule. No one can tell if it's part of the ritual or just an accident involving the tent ropes. You, meanwhile, are caught somewhere between transcendence and motion sickness. Are those stars, or is the sky just especially holy tonight? Either way, you're not about to ask anyone for directions. For the Scythians, ritual smoke isn't about mild relaxation. It's a one-way ticket to spirit land, no return fare guaranteed. Eventually, the elders start to interpret the visions. The ancestors say it will be a good hunting season, unless we see the red fox, in which case we must move camp, avoid the river, and never trust a man with an odd number of braids. The tribe nods solemnly, everyone pretending they understood every word, though half of them are still giggling at the shaman's hat. As the fire burns low, it's time to ride out. Whether to war, a hunt, or just back to your tent is anyone's guess. The horses, for their part, seem entirely unimpressed by the proceedings. You mount up, determined to look fearsome and mysterious, but with vision swirling and the ground gently breathing beneath you, Your best effort at a battle cry comes out as a heartfelt apology to your own feet. Later, as dawn breaks over the steppe, stories begin to circulate. Who really saw a vision, and who just got a mouthful of smoke? Was that really a spirit guide, or just old Auntie accidentally setting her cloak on fire again? Nobody's quite sure, and nobody's going to admit to anything. The Datura ritual becomes another tradition, equal parts spiritual journey, and what could possibly go wrong? Group activity. So, if you ever wondered whether ancient steppe warriors had bad ideas too, the answer is yes, spectacularly so. The Scythians remind us all, before you try to outwit the ancestors with the power of plants, maybe double-check which direction your horse is facing. Sleep well, and beware ritual smoke with a sense of humor. You're in medieval Europe, where every slightly unusual herb is automatically witchcraft. Datura's mind-bending effects make it a favorite in flying ointments and midnight rituals, plus a handy excuse when someone's neighbor starts acting suspicious. Let's dim the torches and step into a world where the line between medicine, magic, and mayhem is so thin you could sew with it. In this era, if you can't explain it, you blame it on witches, elves, or a neighbor's poorly tended cabbage patch. The local apothecary is less pharmacy and more choose-your-own-adventure, stocked with jars of dried toads, mysterious roots, and, if you look closely, a stash of Datura seeds reserved for special occasions, or just days when the in-laws visit. Datura goes by many names here: Devil's Trumpet, Sorcerer's Apple, the don't touch that unless you want to see your ancestors plant. On market days, wise women and wandering healers slip Datura leaves into pouches and ointments, hoping for relief from pain or a shortcut to visions. The effect? A fever dream of epic proportions, if you're lucky. If you're unlucky, it's an express ticket to the next world, or, at the very least, a night spent shouting at the moon and reenacting your own funeral. It's not all doom and gloom. For every panicked peasant convinced his neighbor is a werewolf, there's a cunning healer who knows just how much Datura to add to her flying ointment, enough to cause visions of flight, but not enough to cause her to actually jump off the barn roof. The stories spread, witches soaring through the air. Their secret? A salve of lard, henbane, and good old Datura. Historians will later debate if anyone was really flying, or if it was just a combination of vivid hallucinations and a very slippery windowsill. You, as a would-be magical practitioner, or just someone with chronic back pain, seek out the local wise woman. Her hut smells of herbs, smoke, and that faint whiff of "don't tell the bishop." She's grinding a paste, muttering under her breath, and offers you a dab to rub on your temples. You ask what's in it. She changes the subject. You try it anyway. Within the hour, you're seeing colors that haven't been invented yet and holding long, meaningful conversations with your own shoes. Outside, rumors swirl like autumn leaves. That odd behavior you exhibited at the harvest festival? Datura, the neighbor's cow, which now refuses to moo in Latin? Datura. The squire who tried to arm wrestle a scarecrow and lost? Definitely Datura. In a world obsessed with hidden meanings, every unexplained event is an opportunity for suspicion, and every nightshade plant in the hedgerow becomes a minor celebrity and a major liability. Meanwhile, the authorities are on high alert. Monks catalog dangerous herbs, priests warn of temptation, and the local lord hires extra guards whenever the full moon coincides with a bad harvest. Datura's reputation as a tool of witches, outlaws, and women who read too much grows faster than the plant itself. Trials are held, confessions are coaxed, or encouraged via the medieval legal system, and more than one person finds themselves in hot water for simply knowing what a flower looks like. Still, the knowledge persists. Cunning folk, midwives, and apothecaries pass recipes and warnings in coded language. Some say a touch of Datura in the right hands can cure a fever, quiet the nerves, or show you the future. Others say it's a test, a way for nature to separate the careful from the catastrophically curious. And so Datura walks the knife edge between healer and hex, feared and revered, always just a little out of reach. In medieval Europe, magic is real, but so are misunderstandings, and nothing embodies both quite like a flower that can make you fly, curse your neighbor, or just accidentally invent interpretive dance in the village square. Sleep well, and if you see a witch riding past your window tonight, maybe she just got the dose right. Picture this. You walk into the village apothecary with a toothache. He hands you Datura and says, "Just a little." 5 hours later, you're talking to a goat, and your toothache is the least of your problems. Medieval medicine, always an adventure. Let's set the scene. It's a gray, slightly damp afternoon in medieval Europe, the kind where you're honestly grateful your tooth hurts because it distracts you from the smell of the local tanner's yard. You stagger into the apothecary, a smoky, cluttered den of animal skulls, cracked bottles, and dried plants with names like wolfsbane, dead man's fingers, and, ominously, the nightshade nobody likes to talk about. The apothecary himself greets you with the cheery energy of a man who's only been burned by his own potions twice this week. He listens gravely to your complaint, pokes around your jaw, and gives you a look that says, "I have just the thing." He reaches for his jar of dried datura, dusts off a cobweb, and measures out a pinch with a solemnity usually reserved for last rites. "This'll sort you out," he promises, "just a little." You notice he doesn't make eye contact as he says it. You swallow the draft, taste a combination of musty hay and very bad decisions, and wait. For a moment, nothing happens. Maybe medieval medicine is all bark, no bite. Then the edges of your vision start to ripple, the floor wobbles, and the goat outside the window is suddenly speaking fluent Latin. You are, as they say, on your way to wellness, or at least a new understanding of what well means. Meanwhile, the apothecary has already moved on to his next patient, someone with a headache and a suspicious rash. For you, time is fluid. The pain in your jaw fades into a distant memory, eclipsed by a newfound concern that the herbs hanging from the ceiling are whispering tax advice. You try to mention this to the goat, who looks offended and trots away. Word spreads quickly in a medieval village. "He gave you what?" whispers the miller's wife. "You're lucky to be alive," mutters the blacksmith, who once tried Datura for a persistent cough and spent the night arguing with his own shadow. Datura is the era's catch-all cure: headaches, toothaches, insomnia, spiritual malaise, and, when things get really desperate, stubborn livestock. Just don't ask for a refund if your cure ends with you declaring yourself the new village priest. The apothecary, for his part, is doing his best. The medical textbooks of the day are a mix of ancient Roman theory, half-remembered folk remedies, and the occasional recipe that begins, "First, catch a toad." Datura features prominently in these works, often sandwiched between recipes for healing balms and strongly worded warnings about dosages. If you can't find relief, at least you can find distraction. Of course, medieval villagers are not entirely naive. After enough Datura-induced disasters, the wisdom of the crowd prevails. If the apothecary reaches for anything labeled nightshade, you'd better start running, or at least write your will. Midwives and grannies mutter about the dangers of doctors who read too much. Still, hope springs eternal, and sometimes so does curiosity. When you finally return to reality and a mild toothache, you're met with sympathetic nods and the news that you tried to sell your shoes to a duck. The apothecary shrugs. "That's medieval medicine for you," he says. "At least you're still alive, probably." So, in the great ledger of history, Datura remains, part remedy, part Russian roulette. You leave the shop a little wiser, a little humbler, and absolutely committed to brushing your teeth, or at least avoiding apothecaries with a fondness for just a little. When the church gets nervous about strange visions and herbal brews, they call it heresy. Datura users are accused of pacts with the devil, but honestly, the real danger is anyone trusting a medieval pharmacist with their nervous system. It's the late Middle Ages, and Europe is buzzing with rumors. Not the what's for dinner kind, but the who's been chatting with the devil again. Variety. You're minding your own business, maybe nursing a sore knee, or hoping for a miracle cure for your persistent cough. Word travels fast. Brother Thomas down the road tried a new brew from the apothecary. Next thing you know, he's seeing angels doing the cha-cha on the roof. Enter the Inquisition, stage left. The church's job description, in this period, is to keep everyone pointed in the right spiritual direction and, if possible, away from weird plants and weirder ideas. Which means that when Datura starts making the rounds, thanks to wandering healers, ambitious herbalists, or that guy at the market who always smells like soup, the bishops start sweating. If the town drunk starts giving prophecies or the midwife starts floating existential questions about the afterlife, it's time for a little investigation. Now, in theory, the Inquisition is about rooting out dangerous heresies. In practice, it's about rooting through the medicine cabinets of anyone who looks a little too chipper after their digestive tea. You, unlucky enough to be caught humming to yourself in Latin, and maybe, just maybe, talking to a suspiciously intelligent-looking chicken, find yourself on the church's radar. The interrogation begins in a candlelit chamber that smells of old parchment and fresh anxiety. You're surrounded by stern-faced monks and a scribe who seems way too eager to write down your confessions. The questions come rapid-fire. Did you consort with witches? Have you seen visions after drinking potions? Can you explain why the village rooster now answers to Lucifer? You try to explain it was just a headache remedy, a little something the apothecary promised would open the mind and relax the joints. The monks exchange looks. The scribe writes furiously. You realize too late that opening the mind is not a great look in this environment, especially when everyone suspects that relaxing the joints is code for making a pact with Beelzebub. In comes the apothecary, dragged from his shop mid-sneeze, clutching a bag of herbs and an expression that suggests he regrets every career choice he's ever made. He insists Datura is a misunderstood medicine, effective for sleep, pain, and mild existential crises. The inquisitors nod gravely and make a note to burn every Datura plant in the county, just to be sure. Meanwhile, the townsfolk are getting creative. Old Mrs. Potts, who once claimed her cat could see the future after licking her ointment, is suddenly very quiet. The baker swears he saw 3 witches dancing on the village green, but the witches were probably just his daughters practicing cartwheels. Every cough, rash, or bad dream becomes proof of a supernatural plot. The real victims are, of course, the genuinely sick. If you're in pain, you think twice before visiting the apothecary. The local wise woman switches to more respectable remedies: honey, garlic, and the occasional prayer, while keeping her stash of Datura well hidden under the floorboards, next to her emergency cheese. The Inquisition, satisfied that order is restored and all the interesting herbs have been confiscated, moves on to the next town. The apothecary gets a stern warning and maybe a minor exorcism. You, if you're lucky, are sent home with a new appreciation for moderation and a promise never to hum in Latin again. And so, Datura's reputation, once a promising, if unreliable, cure-all, becomes a cautionary tale of forbidden knowledge, bad timing, and the world's worst Yelp reviews. In the annals of medieval PR, Datura is the plant equivalent of don't shoot the messenger, except sometimes the messenger is also seeing dragons in his soup. Sleep tight, and don't let the inquisitors catch you talking to your vegetables. The Spanish conquest of the Americas brings more than smallpox. Shamans defend their sacred Datura rituals. Conquistadors try it once and immediately declare it the work of Satan. Cultural exchange, not always a win-win. Imagine, you're a 16th century shaman on a sun-baked plateau in the heart of the Americas. Your day begins not with a coffee, but with a sunrise ritual involving Datura, your tribe's connection to the spirit world. You prepare the sacred brew, stirring it carefully as elders gather round, the air thick with anticipation and the faint smell of something that definitely isn't chamomile. You're the keeper of visions, the bridge to the ancestors, and, frankly, the only one who knows how much Datura is not too much. Suddenly, the world changes. Across the mountains come men in metal suits, faces hidden behind beards and breastplates, shouting about God, gold, and, when things get confusing, glory. They carry unfamiliar weapons, infectious diseases, and a talent for giving orders in a language that sounds like they're always on the verge of sneezing. The conquistadors arrive hungry for riches and a shortcut to immortality. They quickly learn the land has its own way of humbling the arrogant. The food is strange, the altitude is worse, and the local drinks come with a helpful warning from the shaman. This will make you see the gods, or wish you hadn't. In their infinite curiosity, or possibly just a lack of better options, a few brave or reckless, Spaniards accept the invitation to sample the spirit brew. The results are immediate and spectacular. You, as a shaman, watch with quiet amusement as the toughest conquistador in the company suddenly claims he's talking to a feathered serpent and asks if anyone else's helmet just started singing. Another insists his horse is reciting the Lord's Prayer. The expedition's chaplain takes one look at the scene, crosses himself 5 times, and proclaims the entire experience a work of Satan, or at least very bad wine. Back at camp, the conquistadors debate whether they've just glimpsed hell, heaven, or the result of eating the wrong salad. Meanwhile, the locals are unimpressed. For them, Datura isn't just a party trick. It's a sacred conduit, part of centuries-old ceremonies for healing, divination, and negotiating with the spirit world. The Spanish, on the other hand, add Datura to the long list of things they don't understand and promptly outlaw it. This, they declare, is witchcraft. You, the shaman, keep the rituals alive as best you can. Under the watchful eyes of foreign priests, your ceremonies go underground. The knowledge passes quietly from mouth to ear, one cautious apprentice at a time. The Spanish burn what they can find, but Datura is nothing if not persistent. It grows back after every purge, popping up in gardens, roadsides, and the occasional Spanish vegetable patch, just to keep things interesting. As years roll by, the story spreads. Spanish chronicles, written by men who saw the world through the eyes of conquest, describe the rituals with horror and fascination. The natives drink of a potion that opens their minds to spirits and causes much madness. Beware. It's the first, and possibly the only, time a conquistador gives a 5-star review to something he never wants to try again. Meanwhile, the shamanic tradition endures, cloaked in secrecy and stubbornness. Datura remains a symbol of resilience, the plant that outlasts armies, the ritual that survives the worst PR campaign in history. You watch the Spaniards ride off, clutching their rosaries and avoiding the local salad bar, and know that some things, spirit, story, stubborn little plants, are harder to conquer than any city. So, if you ever wonder what happens when worlds collide, remember the tale of Datura, one part sacred tradition, one part disastrous dinner guest. Sleep well, and remember, sometimes cultural exchange is best left in the hands of professionals. Fast forward to the Victorian era, where Datura is suddenly the hottest new ornamental flower. Ladies faint, gentlemen hallucinate, and everyone pretends it's for the fragrance. Meanwhile, the cat is licking the leaves and seeing into the 5th dimension. It's London, 1850-something, and you've been invited to an elegant soiree. The parlor is crowded with heavy velvet drapes, earnest poets, and enough taxidermy to make the family dog nervous. But what's really setting the gossips aflame isn't the punch bowl or even Lord Whipplethorpe's unusually shiny sideburns. It's the plant in the corner, a spectacular, trumpet-flowered beauty that everyone is pretending not to stare at but can't quite ignore. This, dear listener, is Datura. Imported from warmer climes by explorers with more curiosity than common sense, it's the new must-have for upwardly mobile households. The Victorians adore exotic flora, Bonus points if it looks slightly menacing or has been mentioned in at least one travel diary as mysterious. Datura checks every box. The blooms are enormous, the leaves are lush, and the whole thing oozes an air of refined danger. Just don't ask anyone to pronounce the Latin name after 2 glasses of sherry. You, of course, are determined to be on trend. You acquire a Datura cutting, arrange it artfully in the drawing room, and wait for your social standing to bloom alongside it. Soon, the house smells faintly sweet, a little spicy, and, if we're being honest, like a chemistry experiment with boundary issues. Guests marvel. Aunt Eugenia swoons onto a fainting couch, fanning herself and blaming the vapors. Sir Geoffrey, never one to be outdone, insists on sniffing the flowers up close. 5 minutes later, he's found lecturing the umbrella stand about the Battle of Waterloo. Naturally, the household pets are the first to take things too far. The family cat, always the early adopter, spends her afternoons nibbling Datura leaves, then chasing invisible mice through the antimacassars. The parrot learns new words, all of which are shrieked in a language you're fairly sure isn't English. The dog, wisely, gives the whole setup a wide berth and develops a mysterious allergy to the entire West Wing. But Victorian society is nothing if not resilient. Fainting spells are explained away as delicate nerves. Hallucinations are dismissed as a vivid imagination, and any untoward incidents are immediately blamed on inferior continental tea. Physicians, summoned to investigate, recommend more fresh air, less poetry, and, if pressed, smaller houseplants. No one listens. After all, what's the point of having a parlor if you can't nearly poison your guests with botanical fashion? Meanwhile, the plant's reputation spreads. Datura appears in the pages of florid novels, on hand-painted wallpaper, and in the occasional scandalous anecdote exchanged behind potted palms. Someone's cousin claims it cured his insomnia. Someone else's uncle declares it simply divine in a potpourri. The truth, namely, that the plant is one late-night snack away from sending the butler into a parallel universe, is politely ignored. You begin to notice patterns. The staff are nervous, the housekeeper always opens a window near the Datura, and the gardener is seen consulting suspiciously old books by candlelight. There are whispered warnings, always in the context of my friend's house, and you catch the vicar giving your drawing room a long, thoughtful look before offering to bless the furniture. By the end of the season, the Datura trend starts to wilt. A few too many unexplained incidents, Lady Barton mistaking a lampshade for her husband, Colonel Blenkinsop, reciting Greek poetry to a ficus, leads society to quietly reconsider its floral choices. Datura is demoted from drawing room centerpiece to garden curiosity, preferably at a safe distance from pets, children, and easily startled clergymen. Still, the legend lingers. The plant remains, mysterious as ever, blooming just out of reach, a reminder that Victorian ambition sometimes outpaced Victorian sense. Sleep well, and if you dream of trumpet flowers tonight, maybe keep the cat out of the drawing room. Medicine shows crisscross America selling miracle elixirs, guaranteed to cure what ails you. Spoiler: what ails you now includes severe confusion, memory loss, and occasional encounters with the spectral realm. Side effects may include being chased by invisible chickens. Step right up, ladies and gentlemen. The 19th century is booming, and snake oil salesmen have hit the road with their brightly painted wagons, promising a brighter tomorrow in every bottle. The era's medical landscape is a wild west of promises and side effects, where doctor is a title you can buy with a decent hat and a good mustache. Among the many so-called miracle cures, cures for baldness, for nerves, for the heartbreak of psoriasis, Datura finds its way into the showbiz spotlight. You, a weary traveler with a backache and a hope for something stronger than watered-down whiskey, join the crowd around a charismatic pitchman. He waves a bottle labeled Dr. Bliss's night-blooming Nervine tonic, brimming with confidence and, unfortunately, alkaloids. His sales pitch is pure poetry, banishing pain, insomnia, and the ghost of last winter's flu. Cures melancholy, invigorates the spirits, and may even improve your chess game. You hand over a hard-earned coin, take a swig, and instantly regret most of your life choices. The taste is medicinal, flowery, and let's be honest, slightly evil. Within the hour, your aches are gone. Your worries are replaced by an urgent need to count the stars in broad daylight, and you're fairly sure the neighbor's hens are plotting something nefarious. Welcome to the world of patent medicine, where the cure is almost always more exciting than the disease. The traveling medicine show is a carnival on wheels. There's music, dancing, and testimonials from locals who may or may not have been paid in advance. "Why, I haven't slept in weeks," cries Old Man Jenkins. "And now I haven't slept in days, because I keep seeing angels wrestling armadillos in my pantry." The crowd laughs, the pitchman bows, and the next town waits eagerly for a visit. What makes these elixirs so potent, aside from the occasional shot of morphine or grain alcohol, is Datura. The patent medicine craze sweeps across the country, and Datura is the secret sauce in dozens of soothing syrups, headache drops, and female regulators. Apothecaries, unburdened by regulations or common sense, compete to make the boldest claims. "Just a spoonful before bed," they say. "Sleep like a baby, provided the baby is seeing rainbow-colored horses prancing on the ceiling." Some elixirs go further, promising enlightenment and clairvoyant powers. Curious customers soon learn these powers mostly involve vivid hallucinations and an urgent desire to rearrange the furniture at midnight. For the unlucky, a dose of Professor Marvel's Indian herb elixir leads to 3 days lost in the woods and an unshakable certainty that raccoons can read minds. Meanwhile, the medical establishment tries to catch up. A few forward-thinking doctors warn about the dangers of untested tonics, but are mostly drowned out by advertisements claiming no family should be without it. Newspapers print testimonials alongside dire stories of people who never quite recovered from their adventures in self-medication. The result: a populace that is at once more hopeful, more reckless, and more convinced that natural means definitely won't turn you into a temporary werewolf. By the late 19th century, a little regulation begins to creep in. The Pure Food and Drug Act looms on the horizon, and suddenly, what's in the bottle becomes a reasonable question instead of an act of faith. Datura starts to disappear from the shelves, replaced by less dramatic remedies and the cautious optimism of a new medical age. You, having survived your brush with invisible chickens and melodious cats, vow to stick to sarsaparilla and prayer. Still, somewhere on the frontier, a bottle of miracle tonic glows faintly in the moonlight, waiting for the next customer willing to roll the dice on history's wildest prescription. Sleep tight and keep your remedies labeled. The 1800s are full of secret societies and magical handbooks. Datura pops up in recipes for flying, seeing the future, and, most commonly, ruining your weekend. New rule: if the potion glows in the dark, maybe skip it. Welcome to the golden age of mystery clubs and candlelit rituals. The Victorians aren't content with tea parties and novels. They want answers from the universe, or at least a good story to tell at dinner. You, always one for a trend, find yourself knocking discreetly on the door of the local Order of the Golden Leaf, clutching a copy of Practical Alchemy for the Modern Gentleman, and a healthy amount of skepticism. Inside, velvet-robed enthusiasts gather around a battered oak table, covered with more candles than is strictly fire-safe. Someone is muttering about ley lines and the power of the equinox. At the center of the table, the star of the show, a crystal vial of Datura extract, labeled in ominous handwriting, "For ritual use only." You ask what that means. Nobody answers. Tonight's goal: astral projection. A magical journey outside the body, and if the recipe works, back again. The group's leader, who probably works at the local stationery shop by day, reads aloud a spell involving bat wings, rose petals, and 3 drops of the sacred flower. Datura, with its sinister glamour, is the shortcut of choice for those who'd rather skip years of meditation and go straight to talking to ancient Egyptian pharaohs in the living room. You're handed a cup, mysterious liquid, odd color, faintly glowing. The moment of truth. You sip. The world tilts, the candle flames blur, and suddenly you're not sure if you're floating, dreaming, or just slowly realizing you should have had more bread with dinner. The group hums in unison. Someone begins to levitate, at least he claims to, and who are you to argue when the rug is this soft? The visions start. You see swirling colors, cryptic symbols, and a parade of ancestors who all seem deeply disappointed in your life choices. The leader declares, "We have crossed the veil, Mrs." Pennington insists she's speaking fluent Sumerian. Mr. Griggs just wants to know why the curtains are breathing. As the hours pass, the spell takes its toll. A few lucky souls see the higher realms, a few others just see their own shoes, and at least one gentleman decides the family portrait is now definitely haunted. When the effects finally fade, you're left with a headache, several pages of feverish journal entries, and a new respect for the phrase, "results may vary." In the days that follow, tales of the night's adventures spread. Some claim enlightenment, some admit to nothing, and a brave few warn about the darker side of the experience, mainly a lingering sense of having accidentally summoned a very unimpressed house spirit. Occult magazines publish recipes for safe Datura spells, each one more cryptic than the last. Alchemists argue in smoky rooms, is the mind expanded or just extremely confused? Doctors, meanwhile, shake their heads. Again with the Datura, they mutter, scribbling warnings in the margins of medical journals. Apothecaries quietly move their Datura stock behind the counter, next to the arsenic and the totally legal absinthe. Still, the lure of magical shortcuts remains strong. Datura lingers in the background of occult societies, a whisper, a promise, a risk that's somehow always worth it to the bold or the bored. By the time the sun rises, you've either astral traveled, hallucinated a family reunion, or just really need a glass of water. So next time someone hands you a potion that hums with energy and historical baggage, remember, some doors are best left closed, especially if they're held shut by a flower with a reputation for upending reality and dinner parties alike. Sleep well, and don't let the astral projection bugs bite. When you're running out of ideas in the trenches, why not try a little chemical warfare? Scientists tinker with Datura's compounds, accidentally creating both a non-lethal weapon and a really weird party anecdote. Welcome to the early 20th century, where optimism and chaos go hand in hand, and science is mostly about seeing what happens when you ignore the warning labels. World War I is raging. The trenches are a mud-splattered misery, and somewhere, a very tired army doctor is eyeing his supply kit and wondering if it's too late to go back to law school. There are no easy solutions. Morphine is in short supply, gas masks are patchy at best, and the average soldier's definition of rest is a nap interrupted by the occasional shell. Enter Datura, stage left, or, more specifically, its active compounds, atropine, hyoscyamine, and scopolamine. These chemicals, known to anyone with an interest in botanical disasters, are about to become the accidental stars of several military science experiments. You, the unfortunate volunteer, have no idea what's in store. It starts innocently enough. You're handed a pill or an injection, something to calm the nerves, sharpen the senses, or in some cases counteract enemy gas. Officially, the idea is to protect troops from the horrors of chemical warfare. Unofficially, you suspect the doctors are just trying to keep themselves awake. The first test is simple. Does the Datura derivative make you less dead than you would be otherwise? Good news, it sometimes does. Bad news. You now have a sudden urge to recite your mother's apple pie recipe to the machine gun nest. Reports roll in from the front. Soldier Johnson appeared unaffected by enemy gas, but spent the remainder of the evening trying to teach French to his boots. Other units try a cocktail of Datura compounds with stimulants, producing a squad of men who are alert, fearless, and, for several hours, convinced they're on a fishing trip. The generals are intrigued, the medics are skeptical, and the field cooks are just grateful nobody's raiding their potato stash. By World War II, the search for non-lethal ways to incapacitate the enemy takes off in earnest. Scientists in secret labs brew up Datura-based sprays, mists, and experimental pills. The hope is to produce a weapon that confuses, disorients, and generally causes the enemy to question every decision they've ever made, including the wisdom of invading Russia in winter. Field tests produce mixed results. Some enemy troops are rendered immobile, some become convinced they're starring in a musical, and a few try to surrender to passing cows. Back home, government reports pile up with phrases like unexpected side effects and may cause temporary existential crisis. Datura research is quietly shuffled into the same file as exploding rats and pigeon-guided bombs. A good idea in theory, hilarious in retrospect. The war ends. The scientists go on to write memoirs with titles like I Accidentally Invented the World's First Weaponized Hallucination, and Datura returns to its previous role as the garden's most suspicious-looking flower. For the soldiers who tried it, the memories linger. You're never quite sure whether that day in the trenches was real or just a very bad trip. At reunions, veterans compare notes. Did you see the singing trees? No, but my helmet gave me some life advice. There are medals for bravery, but none for surviving military pharmacology. In the end, Datura's military career is brief, strange, and deeply classified. The world moves on to more predictable chemicals, leaving behind a legacy of questionable experiments, and at least one battalion convinced the war was fought in Technicolor. So, as you settle in for the night, take comfort. At least your workday doesn't involve untested potions and the constant threat of being outsmarted by your own boots. Sleep tight, and remember, sometimes, the greatest danger in war is the guy with the wildest idea for what to put in the coffee. Doctors, now with more degrees and fewer leeches, rediscovered Datura as a possible treatment for asthma, motion sickness, and general malaise. They quickly realized the delirium side effect is a problem, unless you're trying to forget 2020. It's the 20th century. White coats have replaced wizard robes, and the new gods are clinical trials, double-blind studies, and prescription pads that look suspiciously like ancient spell scrolls. You walk into a doctor's office, hopeful that this time you'll leave with a solution that doesn't involve ritual sacrifice or a goat. You have asthma, or perhaps just an unshakable case of modern ennui. The doctor furrows his brow, consults a stack of journals, and reaches for his new favorite, scopolamine, a Datura-derived compound with a name that sounds like it could either cure you or turn you into a tragic Greek figure. In the golden age of medical optimism, Datura's alkaloids are hailed as the answer to everything from bronchitis to seasickness. Can't breathe? Try a puff of the Datura inhaler. Can't keep your lunch down on the SS Unsinkable? Try a scopolamine patch behind the ear. Side effects may include dry mouth, blurry vision, and hallucinating that the cruise director is a talking walrus. Still, it's an improvement over vomiting into your neighbor's shoes. Asthma sufferers, in particular, become the accidental pioneers of plant-based pharmacology. The asthma cigarette becomes all the rage. A paper tube packed with dried Datura leaves, guaranteed to open your airways and possibly your third eye. You, desperate for relief, light up in the parlor, filling the air with the delicate aroma of burning nightshade and questionable life decisions. The wheezing stops, the coughing stops. Then the walls start melting and you wonder if you'll ever find your way back to the couch. Doctors write their prescriptions with the enthusiasm of someone discovering fire for the first time, confident, slightly manic, and only a little concerned about the occasional patient who wanders home speaking Latin. The medical literature of the time is full of hopeful phrases. Effective in small doses, may cause confusion, and, my personal favorite, monitor for signs of excitement. Translation: let us know if you start reciting poetry at strangers. For a brief shining moment, Datura enjoys a reputation as the darling of the prescription pad. Pharmaceutical companies market Datura-based pills, drops, and tonics with names like Calmune, Asthmador, and Dr. Blythe's Airway Miracle. You can pick up your dose at the pharmacy, tucked between the cough syrup and the nerve tonics that probably still contain a dash of opium, just for old time's sake. Then, as always, reality sets in. Reports of delirium, wild dreams, and unpredictable behavior trickle in. Grandma takes her asthma medicine and spends 3 days reorganizing the kitchen by color and mood. Uncle Percy tries a new motion sickness remedy and ends up debating philosophy with the hat rack. The FDA, that tireless ruiner of fun, starts asking pesky questions about safety and efficacy. The doctors, now slightly more cautious, begin to hedge their bets. Datura is useful in moderation, and only if you don't have anywhere important to be for the next 48 hours. By the late 20th century, Datura is quietly pushed to the back shelf. Newer, safer medications come along, ones that don't cause you to relive the last days of Pompeii in your living room. Datura never quite disappears, though. It remains in the medical textbooks, a footnote to the long, winding story of how humans tried just about everything in the name of health. So tonight, as you inhale deeply, grateful for modern medicine that doesn't come with bonus hallucinations, take a moment to appreciate the bold, sometimes reckless, always fascinating journey from plant to prescription pad. Sleep tight, and if you hear your inhaler whispering to you, maybe check the label. It's the 1970s. Someone's older brother dares you to try moonflower tea. The next thing you know, you're lost in your own backyard and convinced the neighbor's dog is judging you. Moral: don't take plant advice from teenagers. Let's zoom in on the world of bell-bottoms, lava lamps, and questionable decision-making. The suburbs are quiet, lawns are manicured, and somewhere down the block, a gaggle of unsupervised teens is about to add another chapter to the book of things not to do with houseplants. Datura, rebranded by the rumor mill as Moonflower, sits innocently at the edge of the garden, its trumpet-shaped blossoms practically begging to be the star of someone's bad idea. You're in high school, and word gets around. My cousin's friend's neighbor tried Moonflower and saw God. Or maybe it was the mailman. Anyway, it was wild. Nobody's parents have heard of it, except maybe as an ornamental in the yard. So naturally, it's fair game for experimentation. After all, if it grows next to the marigolds, how bad can it be? The plan is hatched. Someone volunteers to make the tea, brewing a potion in a chipped mug with all the finesse of a medieval alchemist on a budget. The resulting liquid smells like grass clippings and regret, but no one wants to lose face. You raise the mug, toast to the spirit of adventure, and, against all better judgment, take a sip. The effects hit with the subtlety of a marching band. Time slips, colors shift, and suddenly you can't remember if you're in your own backyard or the outer reaches of the galaxy. The trees loom, the lawn gnomes look shifty, and the neighbor's dog is definitely plotting something. You try to text your friend for help, only to realize you've been talking to the garden hose for the last 20 minutes. The night gets weirder. One friend is convinced they're invisible and spends the evening sneaking through hedges. Another is pretty sure they're communicating with a higher power, who turns out to be Mrs. Jenkins from next door, who just wanted her newspaper. A third is found solemnly reading the ingredients on a box of cereal and marveling at the cosmic significance of thiamine mononitrate. Word of the misadventure spreads. By Monday, the story has grown. Did you hear? Billy drank Moonflower and hasn't been the same since. The legend is born, joining the ranks of other suburban cautionary tales like the haunted house at the end of the street and the time someone tried to skateboard off the garage roof. Datura becomes the subject of whispered warnings and half-remembered horror stories. Don't mess with the white flowers, or you'll end up in the ER or worse, in detention. The real-life fallout is less supernatural, but no less sobering. Emergency rooms see a trickle of dazed teenagers, pupils wide as saucers, muttering about cosmic secrets and asking why the nurses keep turning into trees. Doctors shake their heads, call parents, and quietly update their mental list of plants that shouldn't be in suburbia. Parents confiscate everything that looks remotely botanical, from begonias to basil. And yet, the myth persists. Datura, with its night-blooming drama and unpredictable punch, continues to tempt the curious and the reckless. Some emerge unscathed, others swear off gardening for life, and everyone learns a valuable lesson. If a teenager suggests you drink something for science, it's best to stick to root beer. So tonight, as you drift off safely indoors, take comfort in the fact that you survived your youth with only mild embarrassment and a healthy suspicion of any plant that claims to open your mind. Sleep tight, and if you hear the neighbor's dog barking, don't take it personally. He probably judges everyone. You'd think Datura would be left in the past, but the early internet has other ideas. Message boards fill up with tales of spiritual awakening, ego death, and it took 3 days before I could see colors again. The comments section. A living museum of poor choices. Let's log in to the wild west of dial-up modems, anonymous handles, and Web 1.0 message boards with black backgrounds and neon green text. It's the late 90s and early 2000s, a time when anyone with a keyboard, an internet connection, and a basic disregard for their own safety can become an amateur botanist overnight. You're scrolling through a forum called something like Herbal Alchemy 420 or Spirit Plant Seekers, where the topics range from grow your own bananas to help my friend is still seeing shadows. Datura, with its history of turning people into accidental prophets or part-time livestock, is a hot topic. It's presented as the ultimate test of spiritual bravery, a way to break through the veil and discover the truth about reality, as explained by someone with a username like Third Eye Guy 99. You, ever the curious explorer, find a thread titled, My Journey with Moon Trumpet. Ask me anything. It starts innocently enough. Someone posts, Has anyone tried Datura? What was it like? What follows is a deluge of stories so alarming, you wonder if the internet should come with a built-in adult supervision feature. I took 2 seeds and spent the night talking to my couch, writes one. I became a lizard for 12 hours, boasts another. There are guides, warnings, and elaborate rituals involving everything from blue light bulbs to chanting in your neighbor's basement. The collective wisdom of the forum. It's absolutely a bad idea, but if you do it, please live blog the results. You start to notice recurring themes. The most common side effect is not seeing colors correctly for several days. A close second is losing all sense of time, followed by accidentally moving to the next town over. One user claims to have achieved ego death, which appears to be internet slang for I forgot my own name and thought the computer was God. The forum mods try to pin up warnings. Datura is toxic. This can be fatal. But these are buried beneath long-winded posts about the mystical properties of plant spirits and pixelated memes of wizards surfing on flowers. As always, the comment section is where the real action is. For every cautionary tale, there's a self-proclaimed shaman offering do's and don'ts. Never take it alone, or with friends. Or at all, writes one. Another asks, Can I use it for lucid dreaming? The reply, only if you want to dream about forgetting how to breathe. A debate breaks out about the best way to purify the seeds, with half the replies in all caps and the rest linking to an obscure Geocities page with more broken images than advice. Inevitably, the Datura threads devolve into arguments. Was that person actually transported to another dimension, or did they just pass out in the laundry room? Are hallucinations a pathway to enlightenment, or a ticket to a very awkward call with poison control? No one agrees, but everyone has an opinion. Meanwhile, lurkers watch, fascinated and slightly horrified, taking notes they'll, hopefully, never use. As internet culture matures, the warnings grow louder. Health professionals pop into threads to explain, in all seriousness, that Datura can cause permanent damage, delirium, and occasionally that famous eternal night in the ER. But the legend persists. New generations rediscover the forum archives, occasionally resurfacing to ask, whatever happened to that guy who ate 20 seeds? No one knows, but his last post was just the word "whoa." Tonight, as you turn off your screen, grateful for both curiosity and restraint, remember, in the age of information, the wisdom of the crowd is sometimes just a well-organized archive of misadventure. Sleep tight, and don't take plant advice from a person with a wizard avatar. Nothing says modern civilization like young people filming themselves eating poisonous seeds for clout. Experts warn, parents panic, and somewhere, a botany professor weeps gently into their microscope. Welcome to the age of TikTok, where trends move faster than you can say, "This is a terrible idea," and the only thing more contagious than a viral dance is the irresistible urge to try something dangerous on camera. The setting: a typical teenager's bedroom cluttered with LED lights, water bottles, and at least 3 devices recording at once. On the screen, someone named Plant Guy, Twuck25, announces the latest challenge. Watch me eat moonflower seeds and see what happens. You're scrolling, popcorn in hand, half amused and half horrified. The video starts innocently enough, some banter, a warning that I'm not a professional, and then a close-up of seeds that look suspiciously like they should stay in the yard. The creator swallows a handful, grins at the camera, and waits. Cue the dramatic music. Comments pour in. Bro, you wild, don't try this at home. And this is why aliens don't visit. The next few hours are a descent into the world's slowest train wreck. The video cuts to jumpy, slightly blurry updates. Okay guys, I feel weird. Suddenly, the influencer is convinced the wallpaper is breathing, the family dog is telepathic, and there may or may not be a portal to another dimension in the closet. Likes and shares skyrocket. Concerned botanists everywhere develop a new facial twitch. Soon, the challenge catches on. Copycat videos pop up, duets, remixes, day-after updates, and dramatic readings of ER discharge papers. Hashtags like #Moonflower Challenge, #Datura Dreams, and #My Dog is Judgy trend for a week, right alongside Please Send Help, and Not Legal Advice. Medical professionals try to join the fray with helpful warnings, but their earnest videos are drowned out by memes, reaction stitches, and at least one tutorial on how to counteract hallucinations with celery. Spoiler: it doesn't work. Parents begin a full-scale investigation. Google searches for, "Is Datura deadly?" hit record numbers. Schools send home letters, and family group chats buzz with links to news stories that include the phrases "dangerous new trend" and "permanent memory loss." Local garden centers are suddenly flooded with questions about which plants are safe, and sales of azaleas mysteriously spike. Meanwhile, the real experts, actual botanists, ER doctors, and people who survived their own teenage years take to the internet, pleading with the world to please, for the love of Mendel, not eat random seeds for content. Their appeals, earnest and full of Latin names, are quietly ignored by the algorithm in favor of clips titled "Top 10 Craziest Hallucinations" and "That Time I Turned Into a Hamster." Of course, not every Datura challenge ends in disaster. Some participants emerge only slightly worse for wear, swearing off gardening forever and giving new respect to the label not for human consumption. Others gain viral fame for all the wrong reasons. Their antics forever immortalized in TikTok compilations and "Don't try this at home" PSAs. Through it all, the Datura plant remains serenely unbothered, blooming in backyards and vacant lots, quietly waiting for the next wave of curiosity. Somewhere, a long-suffering botany professor adds another slide to their "How Not to Use Plants" lecture and sighs into their herbal tea. So tonight, as you scroll through your feed, spare a thought for the humble Datura, history's most persistent dare, misunderstood, misused, and now an unlikely star of the world's shortest attention span. Sleep tight, and remember, if you ever feel the urge to try a viral plant challenge, maybe just dance instead. Online witchcraft circles rediscovered Datura for astral projection and shadow work. Warnings are issued, but the temptation to brew a potion that might literally eat your soul is apparently too strong. Picture this. It's midnight in the digital age, and somewhere, a ring light glows over a tarot deck and a teacup full of something that should definitely come with a warning label. The new magic scene is thriving, with thousands of baby witches swapping spellwork and plant wisdom on Discord, TikTok, and witch talk hashtags that make your grandmother's coven look like a bridge club. There's a lunar eclipse tonight, Mercury's in retrograde, and of course, the latest hot trend is Datura. You, always a fan of the mystical, are scrolling through a forum dedicated to plant allies for astral travel. There it is, a grainy photo of a Datura flower, white and luminous under the moonlight. The caption reads, "The key to opening the veil, potent, dangerous, not for beginners," which, naturally, is an open invitation for at least half the internet to start brewing. A self-appointed hedge witch posts her recipe for dream salve, promising that just a dab on your temples will send your spirit soaring through the astral plane. The ingredients: olive oil, mugwort, a feather found on a Wednesday, and a single meticulously measured petal of Datura. Be careful, she warns in bold text. Too much, and you might not come back. The comments section erupts. Some are excited, some are horrified, and one user is arguing that their cat is their spirit guide and will protect them from bad vibes. The cat remains silent on the matter. Despite every third post being a warning from older witches, do not ingest, even touching the seeds can mess you up. This is not a flex. Curiosity gets the better of at least a few brave, or reckless, practitioners. Reports flood in. One person claims to have floated over their own house. Another says they met their shadow self, who then spent an hour critiquing their wardrobe choices. A third swears their astral body got lost in the neighbor's basement and had to wait until sunrise to find the way back. Of course, not every experiment is a success. Some users wind up with nothing more magical than a rash and an embarrassing ER story involving a confused nurse and a bottle of moon oil. Others experience vivid, unsettling dreams, owls with human faces, mirrors that talk back, and the vague sense that the local squirrels are plotting a coup. Meanwhile, seasoned occultists and folk herbalists shake their heads in disbelief. They recount stories of medieval witches who respected Datura for its power and its danger. Treat this plant like you would a live wire, warns one herbalist. Or better yet, don't treat it at all. The seasoned pros stick to safer ingredients: lavender, rosemary, or maybe just a hot bath and a podcast. Still, the allure remains. There's always another post, another potion, another hopeful spellcaster determined to touch the edges of reality, no matter how risky the path. Datura, with its long legacy of misadventure, sits at the center of it all, equal parts sacred tool and cosmic booby trap. So tonight, as you blow out your candles and set your crystals in the windowsill, remember, in magic, as in medicine, curiosity is a blessing and sometimes a curse. If you must experiment, start with chamomile. Sleep tight, and if you meet your shadow self tonight, try to keep the conversation civil. Sometimes, Datura leaves the realm of curiosity and enters the courtroom. Historical poisonings, mysterious disappearances, and at least one unsolved mystery involving a Victorian vicar and a suspiciously spicy tea. Let's dim the lights and cue the ominous music, because this is where the Datura story turns from weird medicine and magical mishap to pure true crime. In the long, sordid history of human mischief, Datura has occasionally slipped into the hands of those with less than noble intentions, a plant that's equal parts botanical curiosity and natural crime kit. Picture yourself in a shadowy Victorian parlor, the wallpaper cheerfully floral, the atmosphere less so. Someone coughs politely, offering their guest a cup of tea brewed from an old family recipe. The guest sips, compliments the flavor, and within minutes starts hallucinating that the antimacassars are crawling up the wall. Welcome to the subtle art of the undetectable poison, a trick as old as time, and Datura is the star ingredient. This isn't just a Victorian parlor trick. Datura's alkaloids are sneaky. They blend seamlessly into teas, cordials, and the occasional pot of jam. Their taste is masked by strong flavors, and their symptoms, delirium, confusion, memory loss, are easily mistaken for a fever, a fit, or a bad day at the office. In a world before blood tests, forensics, or law and order, Special Plants Unit, it was the perfect tool for anyone hoping to solve their problems the old-fashioned way, by making them forget what their problems were. History is peppered with stories of Datura's criminal cameos. In Renaissance Italy, poison was practically an art form, and nightshades were the preferred medium. Datura, with its knack for scrambling memories and dulling wits, made an excellent accessory for a jealous spouse, an ambitious noble, or the occasional enterprising servant looking to even the score. The official reports usually stopped at unexplained delirium, while the unofficial stories were whispered about for generations. Then there's the tale of the Victorian vicar, the stuff of cozy crime novels and local legend. The story goes that Reverend Cumberbatch, beloved by his parish and owner of a famously lush garden, suddenly fell ill after his afternoon tea. Neighbors swore the new housekeeper seemed nervous, and the vicar himself reportedly spent his final hours reciting Latin backwards and giving fiery sermons to the coat rack. Official cause of death: acute, nervous collapse. The real cause: the tea set mysteriously vanished, and the housekeeper caught the next train to Dover. Even outside of England, Datura's criminal record is impressive. In colonial India, tales abound of highway bandits called thugs, yes, that's where the word comes from, who would slip Datura seeds into travelers' food. The results? Dazed, confused victims, easily relieved of their belongings, and left with no memory of the night's events. It was a nearly perfect crime, unless you dosed yourself by accident, in which case you might wake up next to your own loot, having forgotten what to do with it. Fast forward to the modern era, and Datura still gets a cameo in the occasional true crime podcast or court case. There are stories of spouses, lovers, and even bored teenagers experimenting with the plant's powers, sometimes with fatal consequences. Police blotters record the aftermath. Victim found dazed, unable to explain how he ended up on a neighbor's roof, wearing only galoshes. Doctors raise their eyebrows, take blood samples, and quietly thank science for the invention of better testing. So tonight, as you tuck in and double-check your tea bag, remember that history's favorite plants are sometimes history's most effective accomplices. Datura's legacy is a reminder. If someone offers you a new herbal brew and gives you a sly grin, maybe stick to water. Sleep well and don't accept tea from strangers. Take a close look at the plant itself. Spiny seed pods, trumpet-shaped flowers, and enough alkaloids to keep a chemistry major up at night. If nature wanted to design a warning sign, she'd paint it Datura white. You, amateur naturalist or accidental gardener, wander through the backyard, or, perhaps, an overgrown patch by the roadside, and there it is, a bush that's part floral spectacle, part medieval torture device. The leaves are large and floppy, their edges wavy and vaguely sinister, like nature's version of a theatrical mustache. The flowers are spectacular, enormous, trumpet-shaped, usually white but sometimes tinged with purple, opening at dusk as if to remind you that nothing beautiful ever happens in full daylight. Then there's the seed pod, a spherical green grenade covered in wicked-looking spikes. It's as if the plant is saying, "Touch me, I dare you." You get the sense that, if plants could snarl, Datura would spend its days heckling the neighborhood children and scaring off the mailman. Even squirrels pause, take a look, and opt for the sunflower seeds instead. The real magic, or menace, depending on your perspective, is chemical. Datura is packed with alkaloids, specifically atropine, scopolamine, and hyoscyamine, each a tiny molecular landmine for the nervous system. These chemicals are the reason a little can be medicinal, and a little more can turn your average evening into an unscheduled journey through the underworld. Datura doesn't mess around. The dosage line between helpful and call the paramedics is not so much a line as it is an invisible, constantly moving target. Alkaloids are the plant's defense mechanism, honed over millennia to protect it from hungry herbivores with poor judgment. If a rabbit nibbles the leaves, it gets a quick lesson in regret. Cows, horses, goats, each species has a local legend about that one time someone ignored the warning and paid the price. And yet humans, as ever, see a challenge rather than a sign. If you tell someone don't eat that, history shows at least 3 people will have already tried it for science, religion, or fun. Botanists will tell you that Datura belongs to the nightshade family, which, by the way, is the same group that gives us potatoes, tomatoes, and eggplants. It's like having a family reunion where one cousin brings potato salad and another brings a live hand grenade. Within the genus Datura, there are several species: Datura stramonium, jimsonweed, Datura inoxia, moonflower, Datura metel, and more. They share a common playbook: dramatic flowers, alarming seed pods, and an attitude problem. Datura's biology is tailored for survival and notoriety. Its seeds are hardy, spreading far and wide via animals, water, and the occasional bored botanist. The plant thrives in poor soil, sunny spots, and neglect, basically anywhere you're not paying close enough attention. It blooms at night, releasing a fragrance that some describe as sweet, others as overpowering, and still others as the reason I never sleep with the windows open in August. For all its deadliness, Datura remains stunningly beautiful. Artists, poets, and questionable home gardeners have fallen under its spell for centuries. But beneath the petals, the plant keeps its secrets, a sophisticated chemical arsenal, and a talent for drama. Even in the modern world, scientists are still unraveling the mysteries of how and why these alkaloids work, and what, if anything, can be done if you accidentally join the long list of those who underestimated its power. So, the next time you see those trumpet flowers nodding in the evening breeze, remember, nature's warning signs don't always come with neon paint and a siren. Sometimes they arrive disguised as beauty, scent, and a seed pod sharp enough to teach you respect. Sleep tight, and maybe leave the flower picking to the professionals. Okay, you're here for tips. The answer is simple. Don't eat it, don't smoke it, don't even look at it funny. But just in case, here's what happens when someone ignores all the advice. Spoiler, it's not a fun story. Let's imagine, for educational purposes only, that you or someone you know has crossed the great, spiky, Datura-lined line between curious and catastrophic. Maybe you drank the tea because a guy at a music festival told you it would expand your mind. Maybe you thought the leaves would add a little flair to your salad. Maybe you just didn't want to seem uncool in front of your neighbor's daredevil guinea pig. However you got here, the results are, shall we say, memorable. It starts with a dry mouth, not just thirsty, but Sahara after a hot yoga class dry. Next comes the confusion. Can't quite remember your name, your address, or why you're holding the toaster in the shower. Your heart is racing. Your pupils are so wide you look like an anime character. And suddenly, the wallpaper has some strong opinions about your life choices. Welcome to the Datura zone. At this point, anyone around you will notice something's wrong. You may look like you've just seen a ghost, or like you're trying out for the part of eccentric street prophet. You might insist that you're fine, that you just need a nap, or that you're on a spiritual quest to find your missing socks. Friends, roommates, or passers-by should absolutely ignore your insistence and call for medical help immediately. No, you cannot sleep it off. No, you cannot just ride it out. The only ride you should be taking is in an ambulance. In the ER, the staff will know exactly what they're dealing with, because you're not the first person to try communing with the plant kingdom. There is, unfortunately, no miracle antidote. Treatment is mostly supportive. You'll get fluids, medications to calm the delirium, and round-the-clock monitoring to make sure you don't decide to reenact Swan Lake on the parking lot. Doctors and nurses will check your temperature, your heart rate, and your ability to distinguish between reality and whatever episode of The Twilight Zone is currently playing in your head. As you recover, the details get fuzzy. Hours may stretch into days. You may forget why you're there, or think you're somewhere else entirely. This is where Datura's real trick lies. It doesn't just make you hallucinate, it can erase your memories of the whole adventure. Many survivors report waking up with no idea what happened, surrounded by worried faces, and maybe a bill for property damage they can't quite explain. When you finally return to the real world, you'll likely have a splitting headache, a new appreciation for hydration, and a healthy dose of embarrassment. You'll also get to join the storied ranks of people who have learned, firsthand, that not all plants are meant to be consumed. If you're lucky, you'll come away with a wild tale, a doctor's warning, and a deep, lasting respect for the phrase for ornamental use only. For everyone else, the advice remains: admire Datura from a safe distance, wash your hands after gardening, and never, ever take plant advice from someone whose spirit animal is a lawn flamingo. If you see a friend eyeing that spiky seed pod with culinary intent, stage an intervention with snacks that don't double as a neurotoxin. So tonight, as you settle in, grateful for the modern marvels of common sense and well-labeled warning signs, rest easy knowing you're unlikely to encounter Datura unless you go looking for trouble. Sleep tight, stay curious, but maybe stick to chamomile. After thousands of years, Datura still crops up in stories, songs, and the occasional emergency room. What is it about this plant that makes us ignore common sense and keep coming back for more? Let's take a step back and marvel at humanity's relationship with Datura, a plant that has inspired shamans, scared emperors, baffled scientists, and sent more than one suburban teenager on an unscheduled cosmic adventure. You'd think that after a few millennia of dramatic side effects, people would have learned to give this botanical troublemaker a wide berth. And yet, the fascination persists. Maybe it's the flowers, luminous, trumpet-shaped, unfurling at dusk like an invitation to a secret party, or the spiny seed pods that look like props from a fairy tale, gone slightly wrong. Datura practically dares you to try it. Beauty on the outside, chaos on the inside. It's the floral equivalent of a do not push button. And if history has taught us anything, it's that humans simply cannot resist a good button. From ancient shamans seeking visions, to Greek oracles searching for prophecy, to Victorian gardeners one-upping the neighbors, every generation has tried to unlock Datura's mysteries. Sometimes the results were mystical. Sometimes they were just confusing. Sometimes they involved long, difficult conversations with law enforcement and, on at least one occasion, a goat that could recite the alphabet. Through it all, stories of Datura survive, not because of its usefulness, but because of its unpredictability. Part of the obsession is surely the forbidden fruit factor. Tell someone don't touch, and suddenly it's all they can think about. The risk, the thrill, the faint hope of glimpsing a world beyond the ordinary. Datura offers all of that in a single fragrant blossom. We're curious creatures by nature, always eager to peek behind the curtain, no matter how many warning signs are stapled to it. There's also the storytelling angle. Datura's history isn't just in the textbooks. It's woven into folktales, music, poetry, and family legends. There's the uncle who once tried moonflower tea, and spent the weekend convinced he was a medieval knight. There's the village healer who claimed the plant cured everything from headaches to heartbreak, provided you didn't mind a 3-day hallucination and some minor amnesia. Even modern pop culture can't leave it alone. Urban legends, internet forums, TikTok challenges, Datura keeps reinventing itself for a new audience, each one convinced they're the first to crack the code. But maybe the real lesson is simpler. Datura, like all of history's dangerous delights, is a mirror for human ambition. We're drawn to things that promise transformation, that hint at secret knowledge, that might, just might, give us the answers we've been craving. Most of the time, we end up with more questions than answers, a splitting headache, and a strong desire to stick to herbal teas with fewer side effects. And yet, the curiosity remains. Each generation rediscovers Datura, dances along the edge, and learns, usually the hard way, that not all shortcuts to enlightenment are worth the risk. Maybe it's hope, maybe it's stubbornness, or maybe it's just the endless human quest for a good story to tell at the next family gathering. So, tonight, as you tuck yourself in, safe and sound and blissfully free of spiky seed pods, remember, history's wildest adventures are never really about the plant, they're about us. Our hunger for mystery, our endless optimism, and our uncanny ability to ignore every warning label in the pursuit of something extraordinary. Sleep well. And if you hear a trumpet flower calling your name, just smile and roll over. Some invitations are best left unanswered. As you drift off tonight, give thanks for ibuprofen, Tylenol, and the fact that your medicine cabinet probably doesn't contain anything that can open a portal to another dimension, unless you're into that. In which case, good luck, and maybe don't try the Datura. Let's take a moment to appreciate the modern miracle that is your bathroom cabinet. You swing open the door and find neat little bottles with helpful labels, recommended dosages, and ingredients that haven't been scraped off the roots of a mysterious plant growing behind the neighbor's shed. For most of us, the wildest thing in there is a leftover packet of cough drops from last winter, a tube of triple antibiotic ointment, and possibly some allergy medicine you bought after sneezing through a picnic in 2017. The chances of accidentally summoning ancient spirits or spending the night in a parallel universe? Delightfully slim. It's easy to forget how new this peace of mind really is. For most of human history, medicine cabinet meant a shelf lined with jars of dried leaves, chunks of resin, and at least one thing labeled for emergencies only that looked like it belonged in a fairy tale villain's pantry. A toothache could send you to the local wise woman, who might offer you a mysterious powder and a stern warning not to wander near the river for a few days. Fever? That called for a poultice, a prayer, and sometimes a pinch of Datura, the plant that launched 1,000 adventures and at least as many headaches. If you survived your ailments and your cures, you grew up grateful. Maybe you passed down the stories about the time Uncle Oswald tried to treat his hay fever and spent 3 days convinced he was a duck, or when Grandma Ida flew around the backyard on her broomstick after a mishap with the family's herbal tonic. The lessons: trust the label, start small, and don't take health advice from a talking flower. Fast forward to today. You're not likely to wake up to the sound of the apothecary rattling a jar of dried Datura seeds and promising to cure what ails you. Instead, you can pop into any drugstore, consult the pharmacist, who will, thankfully, not be wearing a wizard hat, and choose from 100 safe, regulated options that have all survived rigorous testing, focus groups, and several rounds of, "Are you sure this won't make me see imaginary goats?" Of course, it's not perfect. The occasional medicine tastes like despair, and the side effects sometimes sound like they were dreamed up by a medieval bard. May cause dizziness, dry mouth, and a mysterious urge to take up the lute. But overall, it's a vast improvement over rolling the dice with history's deadliest botanicals. So, as you get cozy beneath your blankets, let the weight of 1,000 wild remedies fade away. Be grateful for the scientists, doctors, and even the occasional eccentric inventor who brought us to this era of relative safety and clarity. You don't need to consult an oracle or bribe a shaman. You can just check the expiration date and sleep a little easier. And if you are one of those rare souls still craving a brush with the unknown, may your experiments be gentle, your curiosity guided by caution, and your houseplants chosen with care. Datura can remain in the annals of history, admired from a safe distance, its lessons echoing in every warning. Do not eat sticker you see. So tonight, give thanks for the little things, working lungs, clear minds, and the sweet, blissful comfort of knowing that the only journey you'll take after bedtime is to the land of dreams. May your sleep be deep, your medicine mild, and your midnight snack entirely non-hallucinogenic. Good night, and may your medicine cabinet forever remain a portal to nothing more mysterious than the occasional vitamin. You're locked up in a colonial jail, scratching the wall and wishing for anything except more gruel. Suddenly, a local healer slips you a Datura potion, ostensibly for your nerves. Next thing you know, you're confessing to crimes you didn't commit and seeing the judge's wig transform into a chorus line of talking rabbits. Colonial justice. Sometimes it's the plant that gets the final word. Let's set the scene properly. You're in a colonial prison, stone walls sweating with damp, straw bedding that feels like it's been rented out by fleas for generations, and a smell that can only be described as historic. There's no ventilation, no privacy, and no concept of rehabilitation. This is not one of those modern jails with 3 meals a day and a library card. This is the kind of jail where the walls look like they've been chewing on prisoners, and the prisoners look like they've been chewing on the walls. Your crime? Something wonderfully colonial. Maybe you spoke disrespectfully to the wrong official. Maybe you stole bread because starvation is famously impolite. Maybe you simply existed while poor. In the colonial world, guilt is flexible, and justice is mostly a performance, like theater, but with more shackles and fewer snacks. You sit there, chained to a ring in the wall, listening to the distant sound of boots and someone else crying quietly into their hands. Your stomach is growling so loudly it could be mistaken for a rebellion. And then footsteps. A guard appears, followed by a figure in a cloak, carrying a little pouch of herbs like they're about to host a cozy cooking show. This is the local healer, or what the authorities call a healer when they need someone who understands plants, and also isn't afraid to be complicit in a little light human suffering. They kneel beside you with the calm confidence of someone who has definitely seen things and offer you a drink. It's dark, it smells bitter, earthy, and faintly like the inside of a barn. The healer smiles reassuringly and says it will calm your nerves. You are, at this point, deeply interested in anything that might calm your nerves because your nerves are currently hosting a riot. So you drink. At first, it seems like nothing happens. You sit back, still miserable, still chained, still regretting every choice that led you to this moment. But then, the warmth spreads, slowly, deceptively. Your mouth dries out so fast you feel like your tongue is made of old parchment. Your heart begins to race. The shadows in the corner of the cell start doing something unusual. You blink. The shadows blink back. Now you're sweating. The walls breathe. The straw on the ground looks like it's crawling toward you. You try to stand, but your legs feel like they were replaced with cooked noodles. Somewhere down the hall you hear voices, your name, whispered from nowhere. Or maybe it's just your brain trying to entertain itself before it collapses. This is what Datura does. It doesn't just make you hallucinate like you're watching a fun little movie in your mind. No, it drags you into the hallucination like an unpaid intern dragged into overtime. You don't see visions, you live inside them, and you can't tell where reality ends and the nightmare begins, which, tragically, makes Datura perfect for colonial punishments and interrogations. Because here comes the official, the interrogator, the judge's assistant, the man with the quill pen, and the look of someone who enjoys hearing the word confession. He sits across from you as if this is a polite conversation. He asks you questions. And you, currently experiencing time as a soup, start answering. You admit to stealing. You admit to treason. You admit to witchcraft. You admit to being the reason the governor's favorite chicken stopped laying eggs. You admit to things that haven't even been invented yet. At one point, you confess to conspiring with the moon, which honestly sounds like something a poet would write, but the interrogator is very interested, because colonial officials love paperwork. Meanwhile, your hallucinations are fully involved. The interrogator's face stretches and warps. His wig becomes enormous, fluffy, and alive. It turns into a chorus line of talking rabbits wearing tiny powdered wigs, tap dancing in perfect synchronization. They sing about your sins in harmonies that would make Broadway jealous. You try to explain this, but it comes out as a garbled wheeze because your throat is a desert. And the official nods gravely, writing it all down. This is the cruel brilliance of it. Colonial justice often doesn't need truth, it needs submission. It needs you confused, compliant, and terrified enough to say whatever they want. And Datura, in the wrong hands, becomes a tool for that. A plant turned into a weapon that doesn't leave bruises you can easily point to, just a shattered sense of reality and a memory you may never fully recover. Hours later, maybe days, you awaken on the straw floor, drooling slightly, confused, and missing chunks of time like someone cut them out with scissors. You have no idea what you said. You have no idea what you signed. All you know is that your mouth tastes like death and your soul feels like it has been lightly scrambled. And somewhere out there, a colonial official is filing your confession into a folder labeled Case Closed. So yes, colonial punishments were brutal. But sometimes, the strangest cruelty wasn't in chains or whips or walls. Sometimes it came from a simple flower, slipping through your veins, making you betray your own mind, while the judge's wig tap-danced away into the dark. You can't make this up. And unfortunately, someone did. You've taken up gardening, because what could go wrong with a little backyard beautification? There, hidden among the tomatoes and aggressively unkillable mint, is a Datura plant, so pretty, so fragrant. So wait, why is the mailman hallucinating that his van is melting? Welcome to the joys of modern suburbia, where deadly nightshades are just a misplaced trowel away. You start with the best of intentions. After months of scrolling through inspirational gardening accounts and watching YouTube tutorials with titles like Grow Your Own Oasis, you finally commit. Out go the old lawn ornaments. In go bags of compost, the world's largest sun hat, and seeds with names that sound vaguely poetic. Datura is not on your shopping list. In fact, you're pretty sure you ordered marigolds. But there it is one morning, a spectacular, trumpet-shaped flower, white and glowing in the early light, thriving in a spot you never remember planting. Naturally, you Google it. Datura, beautiful but deadly, used in ancient rituals. Keep away from pets, children, and anyone with a history of bad decisions. You scoff. It's a plant, you think. How dangerous can it be? Then comes the neighborhood curiosity. The neighbor's toddler toddles over, points at the Datura, and says, "Look, Mommy, pretty." You intercept, shepherding the child away with the same urgency you'd reserve for a rabid squirrel or a political canvasser at dinner time. You post a picture in the local gardening group, and the responses pour in, "So gorgeous, totally safe if you just don't touch it. My great-uncle ate one by mistake and tried to join the circus." Undeterred, you leave the Datura in place. It's a conversation starter at barbecues. "What's that flower?" someone asks, admiring the blooms. "Datura," you say, with a hint of mystery. They used it for witchcraft and questionable medicine. Everyone laughs, until the cat starts acting like it solved calculus, and the mailman stares at your recycling bin like it just grew legs. You notice other small suburban oddities. The birds avoid that corner of the yard, choosing to mob the bird bath instead. The mint grows around the Datura but never quite touches it, as if there's an invisible line in the dirt. One morning you wake to find a squirrel sitting next to the plant, gazing into the distance with the expression of someone who's just remembered an unpaid electric bill from 2008. And then, disaster. It starts with the mailman, who rings your doorbell with wild eyes, clutching a package and babbling about the van melting in rainbows in the driveway. You rush outside to find your prized Datura plant missing half its blooms. Did the mailman nibble? Did the wind carry some pollen? Was it a garden gnome rebellion? All possible in suburbia, where the laws of physics sometimes bend around home improvement projects and HOA meetings. You call the poison control hotline just in case, and the operator sighs. Another one? She says, the voice of someone who's heard it all. Just keep an eye on your neighbors, your pets, and yourself. And maybe plant some daisies next time. The neighborhood slowly recovers. The Datura, undaunted, puts out new flowers. You warn the block, admire, don't touch. Garden tours now pause at your fence, respectful as if passing a celebrity or a slightly haunted house. The legend of your dangerous flower grows, and you embrace your new reputation as the person who brought a little drama to the cul-de-sac. So, if you're tempted to spice up your landscaping, remember, some plants come with a history and a body count. In suburbia, that's all it takes to go from garden, variety, to garden legend. Sleep well, and maybe stick to sunflowers. The year is 1518. People are dancing in the streets, and not because they've discovered Zumba. Scholars debate, was it ergot? Was it mass hysteria? Or did someone spike the communal bread with a little too much Datura? Either way, you're now caught in a medieval rave with zero music and 100% regret. Let's step into the sticky cobblestone lanes of Strasbourg, where summer has arrived with its usual mix of sweat, superstition, and questionable personal hygiene. You wake up, stretch your sore back, and prepare for another day of mild subsistence and epic plague avoidance. But there's something different in the air, an energy, a tension, the faint sound of feet. Outside, the market square is in chaos. It starts with one woman, Frau Trafia, who steps into the street and just starts dancing. No lute, no tambourine, not even the promise of free bread. She twirls, leaps, and spins, her face a mask of trance and confusion. Within hours, a crowd gathers. By the end of the week, dozens have joined in, all swept up in a contagious groove no one understands. Medieval authorities gather around, scratching their heads and making a list of possible explanations. Witchcraft, bad humors, or the new yeast at the bakery. You, naturally, want no part of this. You have work to do, livestock to ignore, and a deep suspicion of anything that involves enthusiasm before noon. But curiosity, and perhaps the smell of the communal stew, draws you in. You find yourself tapping a foot, then a knee, then, before you know it, you're dancing in the square, surrounded by neighbors whose moves range from awkward shuffle to possessed windmill. There's sweat, there's confusion, and there's an alarming number of people attempting handstands. Rumors swirl. The town physician claims it's overheated blood. The priests blame the devil, or, failing that, the local apothecary, whose potions have been getting more creative since the last round of tax increases. Some whisper about ergot poisoning, rye bread turned psychedelic by a sneaky little fungus. But then there are those who swear they saw a few suspicious flowers, white, trumpet-shaped, fragrant, steeped in the stew at the last festival. Datura, someone mutters. The mad plant. You blink, suddenly aware that the goats are moving to the beat, and the blacksmith is teaching everyone how to moonwalk. As the days pass, the dancing doesn't stop. Exhaustion sets in, but the rhythm remains. Healers try every remedy in the medieval playbook: bleeding, prayer, the laying on of hands, and, of course, blaming foreigners. The only thing that sort of works? Locking the dancers in the guild hall with strict orders not to cha-cha near the tapestries. You, delirious from lack of sleep and overwhelmed by the urge to polka, Start seeing things, visions of saints, demons, and your neighbor's rooster wearing a tiny crown. Some say it's the heat. Others insist it's mass hysteria. But a few point to the Datura plant, nodding ominously in the herb garden, as if daring the whole town to take another bite. Eventually, the plague fizzles out. The dancers collapse, exhausted, and the survivors swear off communal stew for at least a month. The council bans outdoor dancing, and, quietly, the planting of unfamiliar flowers. And the local chronicler adds another baffling entry to Strasbourg's long list of things we should probably not talk about again. Historians still argue about the cause. Was it fungus? Was it flowers? Or was it just one very hot summer and too many medieval TikTok challenges? We may never know. But tonight, as you rest your sore feet and listen to the gentle silence of a town that has finally stopped moving, one thing is clear. In the dance of history, sometimes all it takes is a little datura to turn order into absolute, unforgettable chaos. Sleep well, and if you dream of medieval dance-offs, remember, some parties really are too wild to survive. You're shivering with a fever in an old wooden cottage. Grandma hobbles over, muttering about the old ways, and hands you a cup of something steaming, bitter, and suspiciously murky. She says it'll chase the spirits away or invite a few new ones in. By morning, you're either miraculously cured or convinced the rooster is plotting your demise. Folk medicine. Always a gamble. Let's set the scene properly. It's night, the kind of night where the wind sounds like it's trying to break into the house to borrow sugar. The cottage is dim, warmed only by a stubborn fire, and the smell of damp wool, old wood, and whatever stew has been simmering since the Renaissance. You're curled up under a blanket that feels like it was woven from the concept of discomfort. Your fever has you sweating, shaking, and occasionally wondering if your own hands belong to you. And then you hear her, the slow, determined shuffle of Grandma's slippers on the floorboards. She arrives like a tiny ancient prophet. Her hair is in a bun so tight it could deflect arrows. Her eyes are narrowed in concentration, as if she's listening to invisible radio stations. In her hands is a cup that should not exist in nature, steaming, dark, and faintly shimmering like swamp water under moonlight. You don't know what's in it, but you can already tell it's either going to save your life or add new chapters to your family's folklore. Grandma leans close and says, very calmly, "Drink this. It'll chase the spirits out." This is the moment you realize that in folk medicine, spirits can mean two things. The evil kind that causes sickness. The kind that show up after you ingest something poisonous and start waving at you from the ceiling. You take a sip. It's bitter. It's earthy. It tastes like bark, regret, and a distant warning bell. Your tongue goes numb in that special way that makes you question whether you've accidentally swallowed a candle. Grandma nods like she's just served you the finest tea in London. She mutters another phrase, half prayer, half insult, and pats your forehead with a hand that smells like herbs and authority. Then she leaves. No comforting words. No get well soon. Just the kind of confidence only someone with 7 children and a lifetime of survival can possess. Now you wait. At first, nothing happens. You lie there, listening to the fire crackle and the house settle. The fever still grips your body like a jealous lover. You start to think maybe Grandma's potion was just some bitter root tea. Maybe the real healing is simply hydration. Maybe the old ways aren't so. Oh, there it is. Your vision begins to soften around the edges, like someone has smeared butter on your eyeballs. The shadows in the room stretch longer than they should. The ceiling beams tilt, then sway, like they're dancing to music only they can hear. Your mouth is so dry, it feels like you've been licking sand. Your heartbeat thuds in your chest, loud and fast, like a rabbit trapped inside a drum. You blink. The room blinks back. Now you're fully awake, but reality is slipping away like a bar of soap in a bath. You hear whispers in the corner. Maybe it's the wind. Maybe it's the spirits Grandma promised to chase away. Or maybe it's your brain trying to improvise entertainment while it loses the plot. You pull the blanket tighter and realize the blanket is breathing, not metaphorically, actually breathing, in and out, like it has lungs. Outside, the rooster crows, and somehow, it sounds like a threat. You convince yourself the rooster is watching you. Not just watching, judging. You can feel it, the smug little bird pacing in the yard, plotting your downfall, perhaps working with the neighbor's goat. You start making mental notes. If you survive this night, you will never underestimate poultry again. Time becomes strange. Minutes stretch into hours. Hours collapse into seconds. At some point, you sit up and try to call for Grandma, but your voice doesn't come out properly. It comes out as a whisper, or a croak, or what might be ancient Greek. You're not sure. You might be speaking directly to the ancestors now, which is exactly what Grandma wanted, but you also suspect they're laughing at you. The visions intensify. You see shapes in the fire, faces, symbols, maybe a tiny man waving from inside the flames. The wooden walls ripple as if the cottage is floating on water. You're convinced you can hear the floorboards gossiping about you. You try to stand, but your legs feel like they've been replaced with wet bread. You collapse back into bed and decide movement is no longer part of your personality. And then, finally, just before morning, it shifts. The fever breaks. Or maybe it doesn't. Maybe the potion simply replaces one crisis with another. But you feel lighter. Your skin cools. Your breathing slows. The whispering fades. The ceiling stops dancing. The blanket becomes, thankfully, just a blanket again. Morning arrives, pale and soft. Grandma returns, as calm as ever, and looks down at you with the satisfied expression of someone who has conquered death through stubbornness alone. "See," she says, "told you." You try to explain what happened. The breathing blanket, the rooster conspiracy, the talking shadows. Grandma shrugs and says, "That means it worked." And this is the heart of folk medicine, a mixture of wisdom, danger, and unshakable confidence. Sometimes it cures you. Sometimes it convinces you that your furniture has opinions. Either way, you survive, mostly. You sit up, sipping plain water now, feeling grateful you're still in one piece, and quietly making yourself a promise. Next time you get sick, you're asking for soup. Not the kind that makes the rooster your enemy. It's the golden age of Hollywood, and some clever screenwriter decides to feature Datura in a psychological thriller. The special effects are cheesy, the science is worse, and somewhere in the audience, a botanist quietly sobs. Meanwhile, you're left wondering, how did this ancient poison become the surprise villain in B-movies and late-night cable TV? Let's set the scene. The year is 1956. You're at the drive-in, parked beneath the buzzing neon glow, popcorn in hand. On the giant screen, a B-list actress clutches her forehead and staggers through a foggy set labeled The Jungle. The camera cuts to a close-up of an ominous, oversized flower. The music swells. The narrator booms. From the depths of the Amazon comes the evil that knows no mercy. Datura. The plant, in this cinematic universe, can hypnotize its victims, erase memories, summon ancient spirits, and, if the budget allows, occasionally turn someone into a zombie. Datura, once the star of shamanic ceremonies and apothecary nightmares, has entered its Hollywood era. The transition from folk medicine to on-screen menace is seamless, because what's more dramatic than a flower that can take down a hero with a single waft of its toxic pollen? If it blooms at midnight, it's even scarier. Bonus points if it's accompanied by unconvincing rubber snakes and a mad botanist in a lab coat 2 sizes too big. You watch, amused, as the plot unfolds. A group of explorers ignore all warnings and tramp straight into Datura country. They're promptly cursed, delirious, or possessed by the flower's ancient spirits. Someone inevitably tries to make tea for research purposes, resulting in a slow-motion montage of hallucinations involving spinning rooms, swirling colors, and dramatic close-ups of wide, terrified eyes. In these films, Datura does everything except your taxes. Meanwhile, actual scientists in the audience can't help but wince. A plant that causes confusion and amnesia? Sure, that's plausible. A plant that glows in the dark, screams, and turns your dreams into a technicolor horror show? Not so much. But the silver screen isn't about realism, it's about spectacle. And Datura, with its gothic beauty and real-world danger, fits perfectly in Hollywood's garden of cinematic monsters. As the years pass, Datura's on-screen resume grows. It shows up as the secret weapon of movie villains, the catalyst for dramatic betrayals, and even as the explanation for sudden supernatural powers. Noir detectives mutter about nightshade poisoning, while horror hosts use the plant's Latin name for extra flair. In 1970s TV, there's always a special episode where a well-meaning kid accidentally brings Datura to school, and everyone learns a very important lesson right after the commercial break. But Hollywood's fascination doesn't stop at horror. Datura makes cameo appearances in documentaries about lost civilizations, in nature gone wild disaster flicks, and, occasionally, in romantic dramas, always as the mysterious flower nobody should touch, but someone inevitably does. You, the viewer, might be forgiven for thinking Datura is everywhere, lurking in the jungle, hiding in city parks, and possibly growing next to your neighbor's suspiciously lush tomatoes. Pop culture exaggerates, but the underlying message is almost wise. Don't underestimate nature, especially when she comes with warning labels and a flair for drama. By the end of the film, the villain is vanquished, the survivors stagger away, and the Datura plant wilts in the moonlight, defeated for now, but always ready for a sequel. You drive home, humming the movie's theme song, grateful that the only thing blooming in your backyard is a harmless petunia. Still, you glance at the shadows and wonder, could there be a little Datura out there, plotting its Hollywood comeback? Sleep well, and if your dreams get a little cinematic tonight, just remember, the real nightmares are usually in the script. And so, as the moon drifts higher and the glow of your screen softens, we reach the end of our hallucinatory hike through the tangled underbrush of history's most notorious nightshade. You've survived Stone Age shamanism, medieval witch trials, Victorian living rooms, and TikTok disaster stories, without so much as a single accidental astral projection. That's already a win. Let's take a slow, deep breath and savor the odd comfort that comes from knowing our ancestors made it through a world where medicine was a coin flip and every herb in the garden was just one dose away from disaster. They endured fever dreams, hallucinations, questionable folk remedies, and the eternal temptation to just try a little and see what happens. In their defense, boredom was real, and Wi-Fi hadn't been invented yet. Tonight, as you settle deeper into the quiet warmth of your bed, real mattress, real sheets, probably no spiky seed pods lurking under the pillow, maybe take a moment to be quietly grateful for modern medicine cabinets, ointments that don't induce visions, pills that don't open portals, and the simple luxury of Googling, "Is this poisonous?" instead of hoping the local witch doctor is in a good mood. Because history might be terrifying, sometimes hilarious, and occasionally incomprehensible, but it's proof that humans are stubborn, inventive, and just a little bit ridiculous. We're here, after all, not because we always made the right choice, but because we survived our worst ideas long enough to laugh about them later. So tonight, as you drift off, thank your lucky stars and your ancestors' questionable survival skills that the only wild thing you have to face is the next day's to-do list. May your sleep be undisturbed, your dreams non-toxic, and your nights mercifully free of Datura-fueled adventure. Good night. Sleep well. And remember, if you ever see a trumpet-shaped flower waving at you from the shadows, maybe just admire it from a distance.